Sorry. Yeah. So what we have done for the last week was we went through some of the future Unchained presentations. We also watched the 2 films that you recommended.
Which one did you watch?
We watched I Am Jane Doe and The Little Tickles. Le Chateau. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those were the ones we watched and we really enjoyed it. And so this week what we are thinking of doing is getting back to the Innocence in Danger workshops. And today we actually have 2 things to do with you, Homayra. First one is we will be recording some of the mental health trauma, psychology trauma that we will have as survivors. And also from 7 to 8, we will be going live again with our registrants to talk about the red flags and identifying the red flags.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Are we ready?
Yeah. And also just an update, Phoebe is still sick. So I don't know why everyone is sick these days. So yeah, I'll be working with you for the rest of this week. And she should be back next week. She'll be back in Switzerland next week. So
oh, good. Okay, I'll see her here then. I'll take her with me to our summer retreats, and so she can see the kids and everything. Okay, wonderful. Yeah. So in order to go to our session, because the recording is important for you guys to have, I have taken some notes. I will read some things, but I always like to back them with true stories that I have myself experienced and witnessed within my work. What we have to realize is that when a child is in a situation where an aggression or abuse occurs, specifically from somebody whom the child normally trusts or even has affection for. It can be a parent, it can be a sibling, it can be a coach, musical, sport, etc., etc. It can be anybody. Because it is very difficult for the child to process the aggression, especially when it is coming from somebody the child trusts. There are 3 phenomena that can happen, and when I say can happen, they basically happen because it is the only way for the child to cope with the situation immediately, and because the mind cannot really understand what is going on, and the body is suffering, there is pain, there is fear, there is surprise. The child is in a situation of awe, of shock. 3 phenomena happen. One of them is dissociation. Dissociation, if I had to read what dissociation says, let me go to a document that I did for you. I will read dissociation, but then I will give you case studies so you can see the extent of the problem. So dissociative identity disorder, which was formerly known as multiple personality disorder, is characterized by switching to alternate identities. For example, one may feel the presence of 2 or more people talking or living inside your head, and you may feel as though you are possessed by other identities. The person who has more than 2, 3 sets of thoughts, actions, and behaviors, which can be totally, completely different, and sometimes they may not even know consciously about the existence of the others until later in time, when they understand and accept that there are this many people. It's normally trauma that causes this condition, especially when trauma is during childhood. They need long-term therapy to be able to combine those personalities back to one. But it takes a long time and it takes serious therapy. What is interesting about DID, we call it DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. They are not only simple changes in their moods. they are absolutely different persons who are acting. For example, one of the DID personalities can be a smoker and a drinker, and the others, no. One can be a man, one can be a woman, one can be kind, one can be violent. So this is the problem of the characteristic of dissociations. And one can be passive, one can be, I mean, it's really distinct behaviors and distinct identities. These split personalities, which we also can call alters, they have their own distinct name, age, gender, moods, memories, and vocabulary. A new personality will see themselves, they see themselves totally differently. For example, as I said earlier, someone assigned male at birth may have an alternate identity as a woman. They may experience themselves with female biological sex characteristics. And when these personalities take over, they often talk with a different vocabulary, different gesture, and in some cases, they have different habits. So this is the ID, and I would like to tell you more about 2 cases of DID that I have experienced even more, but sorry, let's say 2, so you can better grasp what I mean. There has been a documentary on one of the cases. It's a true case. It happens in the United States. It's a little girl who is in a very educated family with normal parents and one sister, one brother. But when they go for holidays and for weekends to the house of the mother's father, so the grandfather of this little girl, for some reason, the grandfather chooses this little girl to abuse her. And this happens in the family house, just like the film that you watched, Little Tickles. It happens in the family house. It happens normally. She even described the room where this occurred. It was in the TV room of this big farmhouse. And it went on and on for years until she reached the age of 17, 18 and went to study in college and then got married. Now this person is married, and it took a very courageous movie director and journalist to do a documentary on her, which the filming lasted 7 years. Why 7 years? Because this woman had many alters, and when he went to the studio to shoot, to film her, he didn't know, and even this woman didn't know who is coming that day. Is this the one who is a child? Is this the one who is the real age? Is this the one who is violent? Is this the one who wants to talk, or the one who doesn't want to talk? So the documentary is called I Am We. And it's very interesting. It's very, very mind-boggling. It's very interesting. I don't know where you can find it currently, but you can Google it. Last year, what happened is that the movie director, whose name is Ron Davis, he contacted me. He submitted the documentary, which we submitted to Triune Film Festival, where I am a judge and a jury. And I watched the documentary and I awarded it. It was the film to which I gave an award in the section, which is my section, Human Dignity and Human Rights. It's very interesting. If you found it. If you didn't find it later in time, you can write to me, Ada. You can email me later, an email which you address me, but at the same time, you keep in mind that I'm going to refer it directly to Ron Davis and add you in copy. And I can tell Ron, this group of youngsters with whom I have done sessions are eager to watch the movie to better understand what is DID. Because
For sure.
honestly, except for example, when you watch Joker, it's a split personality. He is a kind person. You want to hug him. At the same time, he can be very violent. These are movies which are about one, they don't explain DID, but they reveal DID in persons. What I would like for you all to have access to is a real case study where she explains everything, and she explains the difficulty of having to deal with all the other persons in her. And also what is interesting is that this woman got married, and she has actually 2 kids. And you can, in the film, you can see the challenges for the family and for her children, because although she's a great mother, she is lucky she's in a great family too, because they never stressed her out. They never showed her that they were shocked. They had a loving family. And this is a real, for me, it was a discovery, and it made me very happy, because I thought, oh God, then this is possible. They understood what it is. Then another case which was very interesting, which was, oh my God, it was the story of a boy who had been experienced abuse from her stepfather. I just opened a little quote to say that this boy's mother was in an abusive marriage with the boy's father. And when she divorced from this boy's father, and she met this other man who, unfortunately, in real life, he was taking care of children with problems, kids with problems. Was he raping them all or not? We don't know. But he was raping this little one, at least this much we know. And for years, the boy, of course, runs away from home and goes to another place, and has a very dramatic adolescence. Nevertheless, whoever met him, he always spoke about his twin brother, who was protecting this one and accepting the rapes from the stepfather. So this one is not raped. So for years, everybody thought he had a twin brother. And it's only through the beautiful work of a doctor who knew the ID, and who very early on noticed that this boy has the ID, because some days he would come to the therapeutical sessions, he would speak with American accent, some days he would have an English accent, some days he was kind, some days he was, so she understood very early on that that she was facing somebody with DID. But because the court case was being built and they wanted to prepare him for the court case and for the tribunal, she was working with him almost every day. And it's only towards the end that he came to realize that the twin brother did not exist. The twin brother was him. He split in two, and when the rape sessions were happening, he was sending that part of him in that situation. It's a mind-blowing story. But this is why I think the best, if this subject interested you, and I hope it does, I Am We is a very soft way to reveal and to show how does a victim with DID lives her everyday life, and why did it happen, and all the circumstances. So this is one possibility of, how can I say, what happens when a child is abused. Another phenomenon that can happen is called traumatic amnesia. What is traumatic amnesia is that, again, when rape, aggression, assault happen to a child, he or she tends to become that dissociative person, have the other person go into the bedroom or be wherever he or she is forced to be. But then when it is over, he doesn't always remember what happened, because his only way of escaping and not wanting to die is to not think about it anymore. So this becomes the memory of that part of him or her that is no longer in his conscious. He doesn't remember, it can take years of not remembering until an event triggers this experience. And again, I would like to go to a case study with you, something that Innocence in Danger is handling now in courts. This is the story of a doctor, a surgeon who went on with this criminal activity for over 3 decades in hospitals in France, Bordeaux, here and there. What he would do is that, because he was a doctor, parents would go to, if the child had appendicit or some issues needing surgery in that area of the body, he would then do the operation. Whether it was really needed or not, he would still do the operation, because he needed the child to be isolated from his family and be under his care at the hospital. And then he would rape the child after giving them injections or whatever, so they are not conscious. And he would rape the kids. So what happened is that this was 4 years ago, before COVID, a little girl who was 9 years old, when her mom comes home after work, she tells her mom that the neighbor, the guy in the neighborhood, had raped her when she was away. So they go to the police. The police and the mother, thank God, believe the little girl. And the police go. It's a little bit like the story of what happened at the beginning of Innocence in Danger. They seize the computer and the belongings of the man who lives in the neighborhood. When they go to his place, they realize that there are tons of pedopornographic images and this kind of things on his computer. But they also find a notebook in which he was writing the name of the child, where and how he has had access to the child, and what he had done to the child. This had gone on, as I said, for 3 decades or maybe more. So they find the identity of over 340, 350 victims. And it is through this one little girl that they come upon this unbelievable information and where to find them. So the investigators contact these people one by one. Many of them by now are adults. They are married, they have children, they work. They didn't remember what happened to them. It's the police who, by going to see them, reminds them of what has happened. And then, of course, for many of them, it was difficult to remember. Some of them remembered. And when the court case started in France, it's not over. The big criminal case will normally take place in France in 2024, and it will last 4 months because of the number of victims. But it is true that in 2019, in December, when it started, the jurisdictions in France were saying that this is very interesting for those who are going to study law. The jurisdictions in France were saying that for a number of the victims, there is the statute of limitation. Are you familiar with statute of limitation? Or maybe I should.
No.
Statute of limitation says that if there is for example, let's say there is a crime today, and today we are August 4th, 2023. The statute of limitation, depending on each country and depending on the nature of the crime, says, if it's a rape, you have time, let's say 10 years. Once you are 18, you have time until you are 28 to be considered as a victim. So any moment, any time after that, you can no longer claim that you are a victim. And this was very hard for the victims of this specific case, because some were considered victims, others who had experienced exactly the same nature of crimes were not considered victims. And for a victim, it is important to be able to go to court, to be recognized as such. So it was a drama added to other problems the victims had. So what happened, when we were at a meeting with the Ministry of Justice in France, and we were discussing how legislation can be more respectful to victims of sexual abuse, one of the things that we said, our lawyer said, was that when we talk about the same criminal and the same nature of crimes, we should not make a difference between the years. It should be, if there is no statute of limitation, even for one victim, in the case, all the other victims should be able to claim being victimized, and to go to court and to be heard, and not as witnesses, but as victims. So luckily, this notion became part of the law in France. So in what is, in the case that we are talking about, we are hoping that for the criminal case, which will be held in 2024 in France, we are hoping that the biggest number possible of victims who wish to testify, who wish to talk about what happened to them, we would like to think that they will be called to testify in court. This is a very big jump, if I can say, in legislation, and I would like to think that it will be a jurisprudence. Jurisprudence in law means when something in law is acceptable in one country, it should be acceptable in other countries. This is what we call jurisprudence. So I hope it will be, sorry, I have a throat problem, as I told you. We hope that this will be the case also in other countries. So this was about traumatic amnesia and its translation in justice, because it's very, very complicated psychologically for victims to accept not to be victims, and the neighbor who has experienced the same thing is a victim. It really breaks them another time. Then there is a third element that can, third attitude, third brain function that can come in when a child is traumatized, and this is sideration. Now, sideration is also, for example, if you are scared, if something happens to you as a child that you're not expecting, you can lose the faculty of reaction. So you may not react, you may not scream, you may not, you are frozen. When you say, oh, my mind froze, this is, you are frozen. then the predator can go on and do what he wants. But in court, again, we have a problem with this because the judge often, we are fighting it. We are fighting it very, very powerfully, but still we haven't won this part. The judge says, oh, the child did not react, the child did not resist, did not scream, doesn't have bruises on his or her body, so he or she was consentant. And we say that, first of all, there is no consentment of sexual relationship between an adult and a minor. This is just to start with. And secondly, we want to invite the justice system, the prosecutors and the judges to accept to have a training to understand better how does a victim react to a child victim, even an adult, but more even children react to this kind of situations. So these are the three I would say most relevant reactions of victims to abuse during childhood. And of course, we will talk about physical and brain damage, I believe, at another session, and also the fact that some of the survivors, some of the kids who have been abused, unfortunately, become predators themselves. But there is no generality. I don't like to draw conclusions. I don't draw conclusions at all. I just say that when we go to court, the people, the man and the woman who are in the box of, they are like those who are presumably guilty. When their childhood is revealed during court sessions, we learn that they all have had a childhood with abuse and mistreatments, which doesn't mean that all victims become predators, but it means that all predators have been victims. You see what I mean? It's a correlation that is absolutely obvious. Yeah. Is there any area you want me to develop more?
I would honestly, so sorry, let me just recap. We have three different probable possible reactions from the child. So first there is the DID, there is also the post-traumatic amnesia, and then what is the third one called again?
We call it sideration. Sideration is a state of being frozen. Sideration, actually, it's the same word in French, and the word is the same word in English, in psychotherapy, and they are all considered as mental health, of course, mental health issues, mental health problems that you can, if you Google, you can find quite a number of elements, and that is what explains that in some cases, actually not to say in all cases, a child who has the surprise of a visitor during the night in a home where he is sleeping normally doesn't resist. There is fear, there is shock, there is sideration. The fear and the shock create this state of being, they say, I was frozen. You know, when we go to court, we hear that very often. When we talk to victims, we hear this very often, and they have a blockage of any possible reaction.
So I was wondering, first of all, does the post-traumatic amnesia line also within the PTSD spectrum?
Yes.
Or so we often hear about PTSD as like a general disorder, as if it's like it's a sickness itself. So what other kind of like post-traumatic symptoms that these survivors may show that are listed under like stress disorders, or what are other ways that we can try to see the symptoms and then try to see that if this has been caused by like a traumatic experience?
Um, sorry. Well, I mean, if in these three cases, I would say it would be ambitious to think we as a non-expert, we can see these issues in the person. When somebody shows PTSD, when PTSD just it can be a PTSD which is not related to this kind of trauma. Somebody who's stressed out, who is bulimic, who is anorexic, who has nightmares. PTSD always has a reason. We are not born with PTSD. We are born to regulate our emotions. We are born to be able to face adversity without becoming violent. We are born to be able to discuss with each other and care for each other. But if somebody doesn't have these abilities, he or she comes very often from a difficult childhood. Difficult childhood could be psychological trauma, which is as bad. A child who is threatened all the time, or a child who is experiencing violence at home, a violent father who is hitting the mother or being abusive with words. That father is never a good father, by the way, but anyhow, but it also can be because of abuse. Now, if it is because of abuse or anything serious happening at home or in the environment of the child, the problem is that the child sometimes doesn't know that he or she doesn't know even what is PTSD. A child doesn't know, but he has all the symptoms of PTSD. So then it is upon a therapist, a psychiatrist to examine the child. There are how can I say, how do you call this thing? There are like guidelines which are in the hands of therapists. They consult, the child is consulted, is listened, is heard by a therapist, and he or she has a guideline with questions. We call it adverse experience, child adverse experience, which was at the very beginning something that a Canadian doctor came up with, and now it has become, I would say, a worldwide recognized way to, adverse child, exactly. It has been, the more you read about it, the more you will understand how it is important to question the child, to try to understand how much it goes back, and try to understand where the abuse happens. It is never easy. We should not think that a victim talks easily. We should not think that a victim knows what happened to her. And this is why this child adverse experience, this is a very simple and easy way for an expert to diagnose a child and to understand little by little what has happened at home. And people can do this even, you know what, Ada, I know people who do it at my age. I know people who do it, at any age, because it is a questionnaire. You answer, and depending on the number of on your answers, a therapist can more or less with certainty say that you may have experienced trauma, you may have PTSD or not, you see. And the questions are very easy questions. very simple questions about the household. And this is how you can recognize. But otherwise, for somebody like me who has, I mean, I have been with survivors of abuse since 25 years ago, and I have seen hundreds, thousands of them. I have to say, if I don't know about their cases, especially when they are young, because when they become adults, they may be already very violent, they may be into drugs and all these things. So you can always say, I mean, was he abused during his childhood? But children have not yet normally developed delinquency or drug use or this kind of, they have not made this kind of choices. In the younger they are, the more difficult it is to diagnose these three situations in children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So after developing these situations or these disorders, what are some of the specific impacts that these disorders can have in the daily lives of survivors? What limitations could these traumatic experiences impact the survivors' lives from the psychological level?
Unfortunately, it can impact all the areas of the survivor's life because, for example, in a relationship, boy-girl, normal relationship, if one of them has experienced abuse, all the intimate moments may be very challenging for him or for her. Just to give you an example, I knew a couple who I was following the case of the girl who had been victim of incest at home. And she met a boy. They really loved each other and they were dating each other for a long time without having intimacy. She was not looking for intimacy and the boy was respectful enough not to force it on her. But then they got engaged and they did their first trip together, which she stayed in this trip. They went somewhere to an island. She could only handle the trip for a couple of days. She came back, she broke the relationship and everything else. And she called me and I said, but why? She said, I couldn't. When he wanted to be intimate with me, only the face of the man who raped me would come in front of me, and I would become violent. I would push him away. So this is the kind of, I wanted to say discomfort, but it's much more than discomfort. That can break a family, it can break a relationship. Then it also happens quite often that a mother who has been herself, let's say a young woman, she becomes mother, then she has children and she has a beautiful household. But it happens quite often that the mother doesn't see the red flags when his child is being abused, be it by the father, be it by somebody outside. Doesn't see the protection that she can offer to her child is the level of protection is lower than the level of protection of somebody who has not experienced abuse. I want to give you an example. Imagine, okay, what example I can give you? Yeah, imagine if, I don't want to put you in a situation of abuse, at least not physical abuse. Let's say you are all of a sudden in an environment where there is a very, very loud noise everywhere around you, okay? You are shocked, you hate the noise, you are you are in sedation, you are frozen because you don't know what to do if that noise is very big. If this continues for a month of time, the only protection you will have if you cannot get out of that place if you cannot turn off the noise, the only protection that you will have is that your brain will be on a state of alert for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, a month, 2 months, 3 months, a year, 2 years. So this situation of alert in your brain is not originated only when something happens. It is there all the time.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And that normally prevents the person from being very alert to a danger, a new danger, another danger that can happen, for example, to his or her own child, because she comes from a place where in her brain there is this alert signal which is on since she is 7, 8 years old. So when she's 23, 24, 25, this has been there all the time. So she is not, her alert systems, her red flags are not like yours or mine, because we have not been abused. My red flags are the normal ones. If somebody screams, I will react. But if I have heard screams all my life in my brain, I don't make the difference anymore. You see what I mean? You will find interesting lecture about this on internet. We can call it we can call it the impacts of abuse during childhood in the brain. There are, if you didn't find, I will try to look for something to send you, but you should normally find, and I like it when you find your own lectures, for a very simple reason. I do not want at any moment to sound or to be to be aggressive, to have to say something which is too violent, too harsh, because I have been at your age, and I think you are a very courageous group of youngsters who want to learn about these topics. I want this to be done smoothly and not in a way that can in any way affect you wrongly. So yeah.
100%. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
So again, back to the DID that we talked at the very beginning. I've watched a few YouTube videos on it before, merely because it was a really hot topic. For a while, a lot of people, they would even pretend that they have DID and like film videos where they kind of just like, change the pitch of their voice and they go like, "Hi, I'm another person now." And I personally find that to be like really off, and it's just like pretending that they have a sickness that they don't have. Well, like my question would then be, what are some resources that, we could use to spread awareness on, DID, and having people understand that this is a serious issue that is happening. Yeah, it's not a joke or like a little drama script that they could be using. And what are some ways that we could do this while, not accidentally, disregarding the people who are actually suffering from DID and are just sharing their experiences online?
Very, very good question. Bravo, Ada. I would say the only way I see is to in your environments, if you get the chance to talk to a larger crowd of youngsters like your age, be it at school, at university, college, wherever you are, is to engage them in conversations with all of you once you have finished all these sessions. And I hope we will continue on other topics. There is so much to say in this field. I would say that it would be interesting to, as simply as we are doing today, to tell them that it is not funny, it is not okay because some people have no choice and they don't even know. As I told you, this boy who at the beginning he didn't even know he had alters. He thought he wouldn't see himself when he was not that one or that. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a real challenge. And in court, in criminal cases, it's a challenge for the judge, it's a challenge for the doctors, for the experts, and for the victim, because it comes out little by little with time. So it is really, it is like if somebody was making fun of, excuse me for making this parallel, making fun of being chronically ill. Somebody who fakes a cancer, somebody who fakes handicap. Would anybody ever dare fake a handicap when there are handicapped people? No. This is a handicap. These survivors who have multiple personalities, they have a handicap. You asked me earlier, I am so sorry, Ada. I took medication, but it's not helping.
Oh, yeah, rest well, drink a lot of water.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, but you know, it is amongst the handicaps that the victims have to face in their daily lives. It's not only the relationship with their own children or their husband or their boyfriend, even with their friends, which is challenging. But it is also, you know, can you imagine how difficult it's for somebody who is a few people at the same time to go to college, to study, to find a work, to go to work? When you go to work, you have to be the same person every day. You cannot be one day a man, one day a woman. You can. So this is why the rate of unemployment of for the survivors is very high, because some of them don't even try to go to work. Some of them go but cannot continue. And you know, the impact of that is not only that they are not participating in the economy of their communities, they are not part of the society, but also when you work, when you meet other people, you learn things, you discuss with them, you exchange, you can change your mind on this or that, but there is an exchange that is happening. You evolve. If you are unable to engage with somebody because you are not seeing anybody, because you feel distressed, then it's a major isolation, not only economic isolation, but also surrounding communicative isolation. And it's very hard. And this is why the rate of suicide is so high in victims, because sometimes they don't know anymore how to cope. If they cannot have intimacy, if they cannot study properly, if they cannot work, what is left? You know, so this is why the rate of suicides is very high. And this is why we really have to learn together to have a, I don't find the word in English, but to have an attitude that repairs.
Yeah.
Victims. We have to show that we are open to that. And for the time being, it takes a lot of evolving in our societies, so the victims are no longer stigmatized.
Yeah. 100%. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, you know, these survivors with those, like, you know, mental trauma, they still marry, they still have kids, but oftentimes, unfortunately, they may pass these trauma down due to their own behaviors that would, you know, affect the children. So it seems like now we're in like a negative loop. And from where can we break this loop? From where can we kind of like what can we do as a society to introduce solutions to these families who are suffering from this negative loop?
I would say if we have a better understanding of what a victim goes through, it's more comfortable for a victim to try to come out, to talk to you, to say, look, I need help. For my kids, for home, for this, for that. So first of all, it is to be a good listener, to be open to somebody who may need your help. But as a society, what we should all do is to um, do a kind of lobbying. We need to lobby and say, you see, because this is not about, I would say, a disease. I still call it a disease, even though I don't like the word. This is not a disease that happens 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000. This is much more common, unfortunately. It is a pandemic. So as much as we cannot avoid being concerned by a pandemic, we should not avoid being concerned by this, and we have to educate ourselves to be caring, to, if we have children, protect them correctly, have prevention all over their lives, school, at home, teacher, and also teach boys that rape is not love, because what is also very challenging today, and we have to find a remedy to that, is that many times our youth today learns about intimacy and sexual relationship online through be it TikTok, be it this or that. And because this becomes their source of information, I would say, sadly, education, they then tend to mix rape with making love. They tend to mix violence with love itself, and this is wrong, and this is something that we have seen in many cases when the criminal accepts to talk, and we ask, why did you do that? Sometimes they don't answer, but in many cases, if the question is asked, did you watch pornography before acting, in 99% of the cases they have watched pornography. So this is also a challenge of our time, because we didn't, at my age, we didn't have this, because we didn't have internet, because we were receiving education from our parents and from our friends and family, and not through the TV. We didn't have internet, and that were better times. We are in a very challenging moment of your generation, but at the same time, as much as it is challenging, I would say there are also beautiful moments where I believe that the young generation will be your generation will be the one which will kind of heal the wounds that that were unsolved before. I believe that, Ada. So it is to lobby, it is to talk about it, it is invite your friends to watch the movies you watch. You all have access to hundreds of schoolmates or college mates. You can say, tonight we do a movie session, we do a screening all together, 100 people, and then we have a question and answer, and then you can be those who are with you can be the ones who animate, question, answer, write down, invite them to go and search. Then you will create a movement, each one of you. Can you imagine if each one of you created a wave of 100 youth around you who is getting educated to these topics, where we will be in, and then each person, we could create a positive contagion. A contagious, not only bad things should be contagious, good things should be contagious too. We could be contagious in that way.
100%. Yeah, we definitely should. So I think this really concludes our sessions on the psychological and mental trauma that survivors could face. Thank you so much, Homayra. We'll be showing this video to all of our registrants sometime next week. I forgot when, but we'll definitely show it. And Yeah, I will pause recording for now.
Okay.